Every year, my friend Roxy and I go on a hike. This year, we took on a monster challenge, the Alpamayo Circuit in Peru. We decided to independently hike this grueling, high-altitude route that demanded wayfinding. We missed our turnoff. This is not ideal. Camping in sub-freezing temperatures, gasping our way over passes nearing 5,000 meters in elevation, and the most dreaded task of all, working together to set up this tent. Stay tuned to see how it went. At the end, I'll talk about what we'd considered doing differently in hindsight. We started our 10-day trek in Cachapampa and began the 14-kilometer hike up. We just got started this morning and it is hot out and this trail is really exposed. I was not expecting this kind of heat. The highlight of the day was this beautiful river, which created a sort of oasis in this dry valley. We were really amazed by the huge cacti, flowers, and other interesting plants growing along this stretch. We arrived in Llama Corral, elevation 3,700 meters, and set up camp somewhat away from all the large groups. So we've successfully set up the new Durston X-Mid tent. Rox is flossing for some reason, even though we haven't had dinner yet. This stretch, along with the next 2 days of hiking, are part of the Santa Cruz trek, which is one of the most popular treks in the area. For now, we're sharing the trail with lots of hikers and donkeys. The next day, we tackled 22 kilometers, including a diversion to see this gorgeous lake. This hike took us along a large lake, sandy riverbed, and through a high elevation eucalyptus forest. And we made it to this spectacular campground, and tomorrow we have to go up and over the pass here. The next day we hoofed it up while dodging a lot of donkeys and enjoying some amazing views. Near the end of the day, we finally parted ways with the Santa Cruz trek, leaving behind the donkeys and the well-trodden path. Unfortunately, the path was so faint, we missed our turnoff. We gotta hike back up a bit again. Today we hiked to 4,750 meters with 8 days of food on each of our backs. We're traveling at 1.7 kilometers an hour. You gotta take it easy at these elevations so you don't make yourself sick. We are now officially off the beaten path because we are the only people in this official campground. It is the morning of day 4. We had a little bit of a thunderstorm last night and pouring rain, but the dawn has broken clear and another gorgeous day. Today we start traversing over to the Alpamayo trek. It's 2 days of hiking to get over to that trek, so I don't expect we'll be really seeing any other hikers. After yet another pass and some wayfinding through cow trails, we walked along some blissfully not steep terrain, for once, and stumbled upon this real treasure. We found something unexpected along the way. A garbage can! We entered the most picturesque valley with a tiny settlement where the few locals watch their flocks under the sun. After missing another turnoff and having to backtrack past a scary dog, we camped beside this rushing creek with only some cows for company. I have a lot of footage of me going like this. Today we've got another about 14 kilometers, which does not sound like much, but it is so tiring here because we broke a record, 2 kilometers an hour. We are feeling so tired today. We had to walk up and down from this river that's like literally right here to get water. And every time we do it, we're just exhausted. Hamstrings on fire. So we're having a second coffee to treat ourselves because we still have a lot of fuel left. Okay, we've got to cross a stream that's deep and narrow, so we're gonna have to throw our bags. So we're practicing throwing our bags to see if we can get them very far. I don't know. I don't know if I can do it. Okay. Oh, nice. Woo! I was practice throwing my water bottle to make sure I could actually throw things. And I threw it right into a fresh cow pie. And it was like a cow pie grenade. Another pass. On the way down, it started to rain. We are off the beaten path in the sense that there now is no path. And there's also supposed to be spectacular views behind us, but we can't see them. Turns out there was a trail, and our app just did not have it marked correctly. We passed through a small town, which is where we could have resupplied with noodles and cookies if we needed, but we decided to skip it as we felt we had enough food. This was the only day we had to get out our full rain gear. We had a soggy dinner and hunkered down in this spot, alone again. There are fantastic views if you are lucky enough to camp here when the weather is good. The next day, we were hugely relieved to wake up to clearer skies. It's sunny this morning, day 6 on the trail, and we are so relieved because a lot of our gear got totally soaked last night. And it also means we get to enjoy the views. After drying our things, we began the most difficult day of this trek. We got a bit off track. Sometimes it's a good trail and then it disappears into a bunch of cow paths, bushwhacking and wayfinding, and it's tiring. This beautiful spot called out for a picnic, but we couldn't even stay long because we still had so much more vertical ahead of us. We plodded straight up a mountain, steering a wide berth around cows, which weren't used to seeing people. 1,116 meters later, we were standing at the top of this precipitous pass. I guess we do that again. I had food on my face.
I think that needs a do-over.
Okay. We have been hiking now for 3 full days without seeing a single other hiker. Nobody at the campsites, not a single foreigner. We've seen some locals. That is it. And we are now on a more established trail, but there has been some wayfinding, and this is not the Santa Cruz trek anymore.
There's no mule highway.
There is no mule super highway here. Yeah, it's good. It's cool. That night, we had the pleasure of pitching our tent amongst a herd of alpacas. On day 7, we climbed 2 passes and saw some condors. After 3 days of not seeing a single hiker or tourist, we finally crossed paths with a solo hiker headed the opposite direction. We were going to do a half-day hike today, camp right where I'm walking, but we decided we're going to lock in. We're going to do the whole day. The second pass rewarded us with these surreal views and then punished us with the steepest, longest downhill trail yet. We pitched our tent at this wonderful campsite where 2 park rangers later arrived for the night. This is the kitchen that I have built and renovated. It's very nice, very luxurious. Here's the tent. We decided to skip the day hike we had planned to the base camp because we were way too worn out and needed a rest day. So we spent day 8 reading in the sunshine and talking to some friendly Americans who arrived with donkeys and guides. The campsite was suddenly downright busy with the arrival of another group of hikers from Lima. Despite having a rest day and being more acclimatized, at least in theory, day 9 pushed us to our limits. Worried about the possibility of a storm the next day, we pushed through the final 1,160 meters of elevation and crossed our highest pass, 4,800 meters. At the recommendation of the park rangers at the last campsite, we camped near this dam with incredible views over the mountains and the sunset. At 4,600 meters, it was our highest campsite, and we woke up to ice in our water and on our tent. On the final day, we dragged our exhausted bodies and our filthy, dirty gear down the final descent to this village where our taxi miraculously arrived 2.5 hours early, just minutes after we stumbled into the village square. So would I do it again? Yes, definitely. This was an amazing adventure, but I will say that there's a reason people commonly use donkeys, mules, or horses to carry supplies, at these types of altitudes. And I'm no stranger to carrying my own gear, but this high, it's just a totally different game. Despite acclimatizing for 4 days before starting the trek, we were still gasping for air right until the bitter end. And FYI, the mountains don't care how young or fit you are. Ability to acclimatize is totally random. If you're okay with the logistics and risks of arranging for a donkey handler, I would certainly consider it. Ultimately, we weren't comfortable with the idea of a strange man coming along with us into the backcountry. The main thing we'd do differently would be to plan an extra rest day, or even 2. We actually didn't even have any rest days planned, but ended up skipping an epic day hike. To make it possible to take a couple of rest days without overburdening ourselves with food, we'd likely arrange additional extra time to resupply at the small city that's about an hour combi drive from the trail. All of this would extend the trip, but make it much more enjoyable and ensure that we got to hike to the base camp, which was highly recommended by the guidebook. We'd also bring more food per day. I was so exhausted after this hike that I could hardly move the following day, most likely due to a caloric deficit. You might find you don't have as much appetite at altitude, but it will pay off to fuel yourself well. Doing a resupply would have made it possible to eat more. The main thing on the gear front is that we wished we brought a different means of purifying water that was faster. A rechargeable SteriPen or a filter with a faster flow rate would have worked. You have to drink more water at these altitudes than at sea level. So that's the main piece of gear advice, but I do have more on a different video. And before I go, I want to make sure that you're ready for the hazards if you do decide to do this hike. Your stomach and intestines are going to blow up like this package of bone broth every time you ascend and descend. It may be really hot, really cold. There may be unfriendly dogs and curious cows with horns. There are insects lower down and potentially snow up higher. The water has animal poop and surprisingly frequently also has dead cows in it, so you need to be very careful with purifying. Helicopter rescue from this region is highly unlikely, so you also need to carry the supplies you'd need to hunker down and to rescue yourself, as well as Diamox in the event you need it, if you're already not taking it. You'll also need maps because this route is not marked. The days are only about 12 hours long, even in the middle of summer, so you won't have time to be lost for long. If you're wondering how this route compares with the Huaraz, or how independent trekking in Peru compares with going with a guided group, I'm going to do a video about that. So please subscribe for more. Hope that was helpful. See you out there.